The Alberta provincial election is just around the corner, coming up on May the 29th. And our guest today is Paul Hinman, the leader of the Wildrose Loyalty Coalition and the candidate for Taber-Warner. Paul, welcome back to Bridge City News.
It's great to be here, Hal, and thanks for having us on again.
You bet. You know, a number of our viewers have probably never even heard of the Wildrose Loyalty Coalition. How would you best describe your party?
Well, the Wildrose actually started back in January of 2008 when we merged a few other ones, and we've had different, what would I say? Because of the merges, and again, I want to say the betrayal of our leaders that continue to cross the floor, put on dancing shoes and getting married and want to burn the party down. We've had to re-register for this election as a Wildrose Loyalty Coalition. This is the Wildrose continuing on, realizing that each election is getting more serious, and this one to me, Al, is the most important election in our lifetime. The reason why I say that is because we have a prime minister and a federal government who wants to shut down our oil and gas industry. They want the farmers, especially in Taber-Warner, to reduce their fertilizer by 30%. They want to shut down our beef industry. And this is wrong. It's not good for Alberta. It's not good for the world. And we in rural Alberta need to send a message to say no to this carbon net zero in this chase for this net zero. It's not good. The world needs more. We have the most ethical food and oil production in the world, and this is where the world is targeted, want to shut it down. This is nefarious, and that's why the Wildrose Loyalty Coalition has sprung back up again, kind of like Wildrose roots. You can cut it down, but we're going to keep popping back up, fighting for freedom and fighting for the people here.
Now, some people say it's more important to build bridges with Ottawa and the Trudeau Liberals instead of burning the bridges. How would you respond to that?
When you're in a broken, dysfunctional relationship that's becoming more and more toxic, you need to stand up for yourself. For example, if you've got a partner who's addicted to drugs and gambling and blowing all of your money, you need to get your own bank account. You can't have them making the decisions and signing mortgages or who knows what they're going to do. Ottawa is broken. Their debt is out of control. Their policies are ridiculous. And we need to stand up and have full autonomy. And that's what the Wildrose is about, is a mandate from the people to exercise our full autonomy and say, you know what, if you don't get your act together, we're leaving. And we just have to stand up. And again, carbon net zero to me really is what this election is about. That everyone else is saying, oh, we need to go along to get along. Oh, it's good. It isn't. This is nefarious. And it needs to start in Taber-Warner, where we have, I want to say, the breadbasket of Alberta, the vegetables, the food that's growing here, the fertilizer that's needed, the energy that's needed. Even at the sugar factory, there's a lot of energy that produces the wonderful food that we have. And the federal government, well, the really sad thing is that both Rachel Notley and Danielle Smith agree with carbon net zero. They only argue on how fast to do it. And the answer is no. No to the Paris Accord, no to carbon net zero. No to Ottawa. We'll exercise our own decisions.
Now, it seems like you take a little bit of issue as well with the current provincial government and UCP leader Danielle Smith when it comes to the wildfires. Can you explain?
Well, what really frustrates me and what's important is information. And it seems like government is being more nefarious and fear-mongering over ridiculous things like the CO2 causing these things versus is it human started? Like they should be out there doing the research to find out, are 7 out of 10 these, how are they started? Are they human started? Is it accidentally campers, or is it actually nefarious? And that should be top news, that letting Albertans know what the cause of this is. And the government needs to do a better job in all aspects on whether it's reporting the health, whether it's, the reporting the condition of the skies. But that's important information that I believe Albertans have a right to know, and the duty of government to put out that good information.
So, Paul, it wasn't long ago that you were the leader of the Wildrose Independence Party. What happened there?
We had nefarious individuals on the inside that basically burned the party down. Obviously, we were a threat, and a good threat to the provincial government. And for whatever reasons, we had moles and nefarious individuals that got in positions and basically shut down the party. And they're holding it, with, I want to say, kind of like a closed book. And they've run 2 candidates to be able to keep the name, to stop us from going forward. So we had to start a new party.
Now, is the Wildrose Loyalty Coalition a separatist party or sovereigntist party?
We're absolutely about sovereignty, but first and foremost, in any divorce, the first thing you need to do is exercise your full autonomy, and that's what we're asking Albertans for. Is that mandate, to have our own police force, to have our own environmental laws and regulations. But probably the most important thing that we need is the mandate from the people to collect the taxes. We're sending $65 billion down to Ottawa, and they like to do such things as shut down our oil and gas, put punitive taxes on of $65 a ton for carbon, making a hardship for every person in Canada. There's no upside to it, but a huge downside. And we just can't have that. And we need to collect the taxes here in Alberta and get control of the piggy bank. $13 billion to who? Volkswagen? For what? Electric car batteries? Unbelievable.
So what would be your plan in regards to supporting our farmers and as well our oil and gas sectors? How would you get our product to Tidewater as a sovereign nation?
Well, excellent, and we'd actually have leverage. And again, if we were to become, and I would love to see northern BC and Saskatchewan come on with us, but someone has to lead. But you actually have, I want to say, leverage. Right now, we have no leverage in Confederation. They get to dictate, and our Constitution allows for a divide and conquer. And if 8 of them say that we can't ship our oil out, they get to stop us, despite the fact that the Constitution says we have a right to that. But as a sovereign nation, we could say, well, we understand that. In the port of Vancouver, which is the biggest in Canada, nothing is coming through Alberta without an excise tax going on it, or we might even put some holds or things on it. We need to be able to argue, and we could, but probably the more important thing, Hal, is that there's been a group for years, the Eagle Spirit Energy Corridor, that has wanted to put in a pipeline. Actually, they've been so bold as to want 4 pipelines to Prince Rupert. The Indigenous people have signed on, but they've finally given up after Jason Kenney got in and dropped them flat on their face. They've moved on to other things, but I believe that we could actually make a deal with the Indigenous people and get this done in short order.
How about supporting a lot of our farmers? You live in a strong farming community where you are in Taber-Warner.
Our number one thing is to eliminate all taxes on hydrocarbons, on food, and we believe we could eliminate property taxes and be looking at an excise export tax. We just absolutely need to eliminate the tax on hydrocarbons. That's probably the most important base thing that everybody needs, whether it's for heating their homes, whether it's for their industry. It's just critical. And to put a tax on that is a domino effect that's causing one of the major causes of inflation. Everything from trucking food to putting it in to producing our fertilizer, all of those things is basic costs and has a domino effect. And so if we were to actually produce and have more oil and gas, to have more fertilizer here in the province and producing those things, prices would go down and productivity would go up.
Now, Paul, you're running in the Taber-Warner riding, which you actually won back in 2004 with a narrow upset win over the Progressive Conservative candidate. But right now, today in 2023, what are you hearing from the people in your riding? What are some of the biggest issues right now?
Well, the biggest issue I would say is inflation. People are very concerned at making ends meet. Housing costs are out of control. We're lucky here; it's not as bad as the cities and other areas. But and healthcare, the access is just unacceptable. And I met one individual. I met 2 in the last 2 weeks of individuals that have gone to Germany for back operations. Germany offered to come and educate and to teach us their techniques, and it was turned down by the provincial government. But those are probably the big issue. But like I say, the real issue, and what I want to say, the ballot question that you should be asking when you go to, there's 2 questions you should be asking. Number 1, are they rejecting carbon net zero? And if they're not, we can't afford to vote for that. And number 2, if any politician or political party who says trust me, but they don't trust you with recall, isn't worth the vote that they should get. Don't waste your vote on someone who says trust me. What they should be saying is that we trust you with recall, 50% plus 1. And I'd invite people to go to our website, wildroseloyaltycoalition.com, and download the 50% plus 1 recall pledge, because that's what you should be going to your candidate. Doesn't matter left or right. This idea that these individuals get in and then impose their ideas and their agenda for the next 4 years is unacceptable, or 18 months. And we need a pledge from these different individuals to say that, you know what, if I'm out of step, you can recall me with 50% plus 1 signatures. It's just so critical. If we want good government, we have to have true accountability.
Let's talk a bit more about healthcare for a moment here. A lot of ridings, a lot of constituencies across the province have a real shortage of healthcare professionals, especially family physicians. What would you do to address that issue?
First thing, we would eliminate the regional, the centralized government and go back to what we call actual chief operating officers of each hospital. We would get rid of the global funding. We'd fund services. If you're doing heart surgery, we'd have actuaries that look and say, this is how much we're paying for this. This is how much for MRI. This is how much for an X-ray, and actually have like a business and know what the costs are. And then we would provide that. And again, a lot of these doctors that want to exercise the full scope would be able to get paid for the services they provide. At places like Lethbridge and Tabor hospitals, we could bring in more equipment. We could start performing lots more operations and things because we have the facilities, we just don't have the money. And again, it's backwards. With this global funding, hospital administrator gets it, and then he sees every doctor, every nurse, every patient, every maintenance worker as an expense pulling out. They're not paid for that. They're paid just because of the number of beds and what services they provide. And it's backwards, Hal, and it's inefficient. And if we switch that to having hospital administrators that decide what we're going to get here in this hospital and what our community needs, and they get paid for those services, all of a sudden, you know what? We're going to run that operating room 24/7. We're going to run the MRI 24/7 because we're getting paid. But more important, the need is there.
Now, Paul, you believe that parents should have the right to make decisions for their kids. I assume a big part of this relates to our education system here in Alberta?
Parental rights are paramount, and the family and the protection of the family is critical if we're going to have a functioning society going forward. And to say that whether it's school teachers or any organization that they're claiming to want to care and protect the children and they're superseding parental rights, that is bad for society. Parental rights need to be paramount, needs to be in the Constitution, needs to be protected. They're the ones that have the best interest of their child. Are we perfect as parents? Nope, but we're a lot better than a daycare or a school or some social worker with the government that spends 15 minutes and looks at something and says, oh, this doesn't work or that doesn't work, or even the judges. I've been appalled at some of the decisions that I've seen in the courts, watching as people were trying to do the best they could for their children. But no, parental rights paramount.
Let's stick with education for just a moment here, Paul. Some teachers I've spoken with say that the ratio is too high, too many students per teacher. What would you like to see for a student-teacher ratio? 20 to 1, 30 to 1, 25, somewhere in the middle? What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, Hal, it starts on which grade. When you're down in kindergarten through grade 6, you actually need smaller numbers. When it's getting up bigger classes, you look at university. Up at the U of A, I was in some classes with, 2,000 students in them. And so it reflects that way. But the bottom line, we don't have enough teachers. We need more teachers. We need to reduce that the student to ratio number for teachers. And we can do that, especially if we're collecting the taxes here in Alberta for Albertans. This idea of sending money to Ottawa and then our handout, looking for infrastructure, looking for healthcare transfers, looking for policing money is wrong. And we are collecting billions of dollars here in the province. Problem is, it's being sucked out to Ottawa. We need to stand up and say, no, you guys can waste other people's money, but not Alberta taxpayers.
Paul, the Wildrose Loyalty Coalition believes in a free market economy. How would this really differ from the approach of the main parties?
Well, let's even start with carbon net zero and all the nefarious things that government is doing. $13 billion to a battery company. How many of these windmill and solar panel companies are they doing? I mean, they were giving us money to put in a light bulb. They're taking out. They're saying that we can't use straws. Government's intruding in the free market at never seen levels before, in our opinion. And all of that corporate welfare needs to be eliminated. But what you need is low taxes and strong competition between businesses or new ideas. And again, to get businesses started, like all of the red tape and the taxes, and it's crazy. There is no free market. Well, the free market is very limited. You can't say there isn't no free market, but the ability to compete is not here. Again, the regulations on where they say, oh, you need to do all of these things before you can get in, and this requirement or being bonded. What we actually need is a judicial system that people can access and hold people accountable. But because I want to say our legal system fails, government steps in with rules and regulations, but they don't hold any water. We need to have a free market and a judicial system where people are held accountable for doing nefarious things and hurting other people of other people's business.
Now, we only have a few short moments left here, Paul, but I wanted to ask you, when it comes to provincial taxes, you want to make some pretty major changes. What are some of those changes?
Well, the biggest thing is, and just realize that municipally, the municipal government collects our property taxes, and on that property tax, there's an education tax. That education tax then goes to the province. The best government is always the closest government. All of the taxes should be collected locally. The income tax, all of that that's out there should be here locally and then sent on to what are the constitutional requirements of the province or the federal government. The bottom line is if we're not collecting the taxes here and we send it out to these irresponsible individuals, it's sucking our communities dry, especially in rural Alberta. And we need to say no. And so we need a mandate from the people to say, you know what, we're going to collect all the taxes here and we'll pass them up the ladder rather than the other way around.
Paul Hinman is the leader of the Wildrose Loyalty Coalition and the candidate for Tabor-Warner. Thanks so much for your time today, Paul.
Thank you, Hal.